the differences in between working with Python Pandas and started code. When we work with Python Pandas, we have to have a slight shift of how we think about programming because we are used to programming with Python and doing loops and going over items and using data structures, calling functions. But when we work with Pandas, the first few things that Pandas does for us, so it's much better to utilize them because usually it deals with data, so it already has some functionality, and it's not that intuitive, especially when we come from a programming language where we are used to work in a certain way. So let's take a couple of examples. When we use pandas.to CSV, then when we look at the CSV, we'll see that it's appending automatically column 0 with an increasing sequence numbers. So if we don't need these sequence numbers, and in many cases we don't need them, then when we save the CSV with pd.toCSV, then we need to set something like parameter of index false. This is called the index column. Another issue is that when we read CSV, then if the CSV that was written already had those indexes, then when we read it, it would create another column automatically. pd.readCSV, it would create a column named unnamed indexes, and again we'll have these sequence numbers of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so forth. So again, when we read the CSV, what we want to do is to tell it some column, the index is false. Okay. Another thing very good to know about Pandas is that it has a dot query. So when we have Pandas data frames, then instead of the syntax in Python where we say df square brackets column name bigger than, and then we add more conditions and so forth, we can just use df.query and pass a query as a string, and this would simplify the thing. So it's good to know that Python data frame has this method .query, and then we can pass a string of query where the color is bigger than blue and the date is smaller than 2023. In this way we can pass everything in a string. Okay, so in general, while in Python we do iterations and we do for I in row, it's always best to use Pandas what's called vectorized operations. So instead of doing a loop, we need to treat the column as a whole. Okay. And when we treat the columns as a whole, sometimes people do df equals, assigning to df some transformation on the pandas data frame, then assigning in the next line to df1, then another transformation, and on df2 another transformation. A more efficient way would be to use chaining of the method. So df.groupby, .sort, .filter. This would just be more efficient. It's not that critical. Another issue with Python Pandas data frame that's good to know is that when we read the items from CSV, then there are some parameters that would parse things automatically for us. So pd.readCSV, and then in one of the parameters we parse dates equals true, and in this way it would actually parse the dates and not read them as strings. Another thing good to know about Pandas is that if we want to plot something, then Pandas already have plotting capabilities, so just use df.plot instead of all the ceremony of matplotlib, etc. When we save items to files, then it's losing the types. And when we save something, a pandas data frame to CSV, it will lose all the types. So if we want to keep the types, then use just to parquet or to pickle. Pandas also has another, as we said, that Pandas has the plot method. So it also has a .str method. So when we need to manipulate strings, you can look at the pandas dataframe.str and see which methods exist in this object, and then you'll have a whole set of methods to manipulate strings. So this was a brief overview. I think the main point to take from this is the issue with the index, where we usually, when we save to CSV or read CSV or read something, then we want to set the index column to false, so it won't save this sequence number. Another good thing that we can take from this is the data frame.query that would simplify the queries that we have. All the efficiencies are not critical. Okay, so df.query, df.index is false, and parse dates equal true as a parameter when we read CSVs, and df.plot and df.str. So let's summarize this again. df.query is good for string queries on pandas data frames. Set index false, good for to CSV and read CSV when we don't want this increasing sequence number. Parse dates equals true is good when we read the CSV with dates, and usually it has dates. df.plot will give us plotting capabilities, and df.str or pandas.str will give us many string methods. One last thing, we have also df.style. We can actually style the data frame that we print to screen. So if you want to add colorizations and mini graphs, then we can use df.style.